Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today to discuss acoustic louvers and why we use them and what they are and um, why they're such an important item in many construction projects today. So today, entitled Successful Applications Fixed Blade Acoustic Louvers. A lot of people ask what are acoustic louvers, and in the acoustic louver industry, we often say, those of us that also are in the ventilation silencer business, that acoustic louvers are short, stubby silencers. Basically, you take a silencer and you smash it along its length into a smaller box, and there's your acoustic louver. It's used in areas where there's space restrictions, very often either when the footprint is small to start in new construction, or in the 11th and a half hour when there might be a noise issue out of a mechanical room or generator room, something like that, and we have to put in some acoustic silencing. And there's not a lot of room there, not a lot of length, not a lot of space. So louvers come into play. The blades of these louvers are fixed. A lot of people asked, are they movable blades? No, they're fixed blade acoustic louvers. They're not a damper, not meant to be used like a damper. So that's a little explanation there. Acoustic louver applications, they can be used in many areas of construction, of building construction and surrounding building areas. Acoustic louvers used as part of the intake and exhaust systems of mechanical rooms is very common. Generator rooms, such as on the lower left picture here, this is a central utility plant for a major hospital. And these are these four openings here, which are about 14.5 foot square, are discharge off of radiator cooled generators. And those are fixed blade acoustic louvers. There's no through line of sight. They're 24-inch deep to control the noise levels. Originally, this site had just weather louvers. And what happened when they started up the generators, ran them all. This is the main rear entrance of the hospital where our point of view is, and it was running at about 85 dBA, which is quite loud. And then behind this central utility plant, there are the outside air intake openings. And those were replaced with acoustic louvers as well, because on the other side of this central utility plant, property line very close, there's a 250 home subdivision. And so there was a lot of noise breaking out of there, and acoustic louvers, because everything was installed and assembled, acoustic louvers were great to use because there was minimal space to install them. Now on the right here, they can also be used as part of a barrier wall, like an equipment yard barrier wall. This particular one on the right is on a roof at a school. And there was a lot of mechanical equipment up there, some of it very close to the roof, to the walls. So they needed plenty of airflow, cross ventilation. So mechanical engineer liked it because it was allowing the equipment ventilation and proper operation. The architect liked it because of the look. And so as instead of a solid barrier wall system, acoustic system, they used acoustic louvers. Another way you can use acoustic louvers as a portion of a composite solution. In this case, we have an air-cooled chiller where the noise was too loud, both noise propagating upward and noise propagating out the sides. So this particular noise block solution uses a skirt of acoustic louvers down and parallel to the long dimensions on both sides of this of the air-cooled chiller. So it allows airflow in at an extremely low pressure drop, like 3/100ths of an inch static pressure drop. So it's basically invisible to the equipment and not stressing out the equipment, but instead allowing it to operate properly. But also it's controlling the noise and giving you the noise reduction similar to what the barrier panels would be as well. So the two together give a composite noise reduction result that was desired. And you can see here on the outside the solid blade faces. On the inside, you're actually looking at the perforated faces. So on every acoustic louver, the top of the blade is solid metal, the bottom of the blade is perforated metal, and then the acoustic louver is filled with insulation to absorb sound energy. So you can see kind of how we inserted, in this case, these were W columns and some backer angles, and they were able to sit right into the columns in this case. we also make various thicknesses of louvers, so there'd be various methods of attachment. Another way you can use acoustic louvers is single and double doors. You allow that unfettered access, you have immediate access, and you also have the airflow. So a lot of times this works out well. Wastewater treatment plants, pump rooms, just anywhere where you need the access, but you also need the airflow. So we can design acoustic louvers of various thicknesses, as you can see here, both the elevation and the plan view up here. And what we use very often is piano hinges. Heavy duty piano hinges is something that works so great in these applications, with simple clasps where you can use padlocks or different types of locks. So it's not an exotic door, but it does the job and it looks very nice. So acoustic louvers, as mentioned before, the mechanism of performance. Why do they perform? Why do they offer noise control? Well, the blades, like we say, are angled. So you can have one like here on the left, which is a no through line of sight, kind of a security, and you don't see the equipment behind it, but also security. And then on the right, you see just a sloped blade where, depending what angle you're at, you can actually see right through them. But once again, the top of every blade is solid metal. The bottom of the blades are perforated metal, and then within those blades, we have acoustic media. Let's see, relatively large absorption surface. So that's what's really neat here on why these work. We all agree that noise is sound energy. That's what it is. It's airborne sound energy. And what's nice here is when you look at every blade, the bottom of every blade being perforated metal, well, basically that adds up, a large surface area that the sound can penetrate through and then be absorbed. So every blade is an additional surface area where noise can be absorbed. If you look at our acoustic louvers, we have various models, thicknesses, and then hence performance. So if you look at a KCAC, Kinetics model KCAC, that's a chevron or V-shaped air passage, the no through line of sight, kind of a security type louver. They come in 30 to 40% open area, and they come in anywhere between 6, 12, 16, and 24-inch depths. There's a no through line of sight, like we said. That's going to give you your maximum noise control. But for given face velocities, it's also going to give you a fairly high pressure drop. But as long as you keep face velocities about 250 feet per minute to 350 feet per minute, then it's a great louver to use. Now the key there, when we talk about face velocity, it's not passage velocity, but it's the velocity taking the height of this louver times the width of this louver, and then taking the CFM divided by that. That's the face velocity. That's how we normalize our pressure drop data, not passage velocity. Model KCPL, those come in 30 to 40% open areas as well. Also, they're a angled passage. So depending where you stand on the outside, you can actually see through it. It gives you a lower pressure drop than the KCAC for a given percent open area in CFM. It's got thinner blades, so there's always more blades. It's more of an architectural look. That's why we've come out with the KCPL. It gives you a much more architectural look than the next louver we're going to talk about. You get medium noise reduction here on the KCPL. On the KCAL, the nice thing here is for those applications where you need just a little bit of noise control, you really don't want to you have very little pressure drop, external pressure drop available. So these are 40 to 50% open area. The blades tend to be thicker and fewer than the KCPL. Great louver, but the reason, like I said, we came out with KCPL is it has a much more architectural look, thinner, more blades. And this is a low to medium noise reduction, maximum noise reduction. Now, if you look at acoustic louvers, although they are not weather louvers and they're not intended to be weather louvers, okay? A lot of times they're paired with maybe hurricane louvers or sand louvers, some type of weather louver. But there are guidelines and there are tests that are run to take a look at the water penetration. Basically, it varies with percent open area. I think you can expect that the more percent open area. A 50% open area louver is probably going to have more water penetration for a given face velocity than you would a more restrictive, maybe 30% open area louver. The beginning point, basically what we're talking about water penetration, it's the beginning point of water penetration at 0.01 ounces per square foot of louver face. So if we look at this and we look at the KCAC, if you design anywhere, depending, now this is all going to be a function of the depth of louver too. So the deeper the louver, so a 6-inch louver is not going to perform as well as a 12-inch louver at controlling water penetration. But based upon your various thicknesses and percent open areas, you can be running anywhere between 280 to 618 feet per minute. Of course, the deeper the louver, the higher the face velocity you can do before you start having any water penetration issues. These are guidelines. It's not a pass-fail. It's something that if you're designing, you can go ahead and design towards these values. You also have a face velocity for 265 to 400 feet per minute for the KCPL. Remember, the KCPL only goes up to about 12-inch deep. Same thing for the KCAL. KCAL, since it has a much more open area, 40 to 50% open area, you have a much lower face velocity before you start to run into some water entrainment issues, penetration. Acoustic louvers come in various constructions and finishes. All right, you can have galvanized G90 coating would be a standard. If you're going to powder coat something or wet paint something, we would use a galvanneal, an A60, and a annealed product, which is basically, some of you had heard over the years, paint grip products or milk phosphatized galvanized that readily accepts paint. The better product now, moving into the future and today, is an annealed product, which does the same thing. It's an annealing process, makes it, still gives you the galvanized corrosion resistance, but also gives you a great surface to adhere paint to, whether it's powder or wet paint. For many industrial projects or wastewater treatment plants, you can be looking at stainless steel types 304 and 316, or aluminum 3003 type H14. They have forms of acoustic media in them, and a lot of times you get a question and people say, well, if this is bringing in fresh air, let's say an outside air intake into a mechanical equipment room, it might be moist air, there might be some water. Do we need to put any kind of fiberglass cloth or vapor barrier or erosion barrier around the insulation? And you can do that, but in all reality, you don't need to. So the acoustic media that we use is more of a wick away product. So if it gets wet, same thing in some of our ventilation silencers, if it gets wet, it more so wicks away and then dries and does not settle out on you. So that's real good. Like I said, powder coat finish. We also have a wet fluoropon finish. We have paint that can be warranted for 10 years or paint that can be warranted for 20 years. We have a mill finish, which is an unpainted louver, which you see on the left. You see a louver in the middle there going through a powder coat line. That's a 4-foot by 8-foot by 12-inch deep louver. And then you can look at, we also have bird screens and flanges we can offer. And on the right there, you can look at and see how we would mount the bird screen, basically frame the bird screen. This isn't bug screen though. This is not insect screen, it's bird screen. You can put insect screen, but you have to be careful with insect screen because it's going to increase your pressure drop. So bird screen is what we use. If you do use on bug screen or insect screen, just make sure you have enough external static to overcome that pressure drop. There's various ways you can install our louvers. As you saw on the previous slide, this is the most wonderful thing. If you look at these louvers, they are just solid boxes, all perimeter. So the whole perimeter is just a solid face of 16 gauge metal or heavier for equal strength if you go to aluminum. But that gives you a lot of flexibility for mounting. And so some people will have a concrete, say an existing concrete opening. Sometimes they might want to flush mount on the outside if this is the outdoors on this side. And so they will invert, what I call inverted, a either formed angle or a structural angle. That angle could be 2 by 2 by 3/16, 4 by 4 by 1/4 inch. It can be 1 1/8 by 1 1/8 by 10 gauge. There's a lot of different mounting methods there where they can anchor it into the substrate and then sheet metal tech screw it to the outer casing with no damage to the louver. It's a great solid joint. The next thing you can do, though, on the right is if you want to have an angle, what I would consider a standard angle, where you have slightly some of the louver protruding out, a little easier to install than the one on the left. But they're both correct. They will both work fine. It really depends on the look that the architect wants. Now, a lot of our louvers, it seems like the big spark of louvers are coastal applications that we've seen. I mean, louvers have just been a hot item for the last 5 years, especially, but forever, but for the last 5 years. And there's a lot of coastal applications. So sometimes coastally, depending on your IBC adopted code for wind speed, you'll need maybe a little more structural integrity on your mounting. So in this case, you might need angle on the outside. If this is the interior of the mechanical room, you might need a flat plate there, or angle and angle if you want to straddle that opening. So there's a lot of options there. But what's neat about Kinetics is we can help you with that. For instance, a lot of customers will have their own structural steel already designed and in place. What Kinetics can do is help design and supply the attachment methods, the angles and all that. And the reason we can do that at Kinetics, which is so nice, is that Kinetics is heavy into seismic restraint, vibration isolation, structure-borne vibration isolation. We have a lot of structural engineers on staff. So we have our own structural engineers on staff, and that is, we have that capabilities to help and work with the engineer of record or who's ever designing the receiving structure. So that's really awesome. Here's another one where the architect might want the look of, I don't want to see the steel, whereas on the previous one, you'll actually see the steel, the tube steel in this case, could be W columns, could be concrete, but they can see that. Whereas let's say they already have tube steel framing all the way up. This would be like this is a barrier wall system. So this is an elevation view that you see here, and they have their tube steel columns, their horizontal tube steel braces, and that's all installed. Well, then they want to put acoustic louvers, adhere them to that surface mount, what we would call it. And everything you see here in red or blue would be what Kinetics would design and offer the structural analysis, the reaction forces, and all that information needed. We would design and supply all the blue and red items here for bracing. And I think that's a great opportunity. The people that, and we can also design the whole structure if you want, but very often somebody has already designed this structure well in advance. Sometimes you may have an opening, in this case, like I mentioned on that central utility plant, where the bank here might be 14'6" by 14'6" or 14 foot wide by 20 foot high. We won't make one louver that is 14 wide, 20 foot high, and maybe 12-inch deep, and then you got to paint it too, and then you have to ship it to the job site. Instead, we'll make it into smaller louvers to be field banked. All right, so field banking, there's going to be a perimeter angle all the way around, which we can see here. And then where all these come together, these acoustic louvers stack like building blocks, both on the outside and the inside surface of the room they're attached to, we'll get this joiner strip flashing that then flashes over those butt joints and then also works as some support. Here's a system just like that. You can see that tube steel framing that was designed in place. The acoustic louvers, 12-inch deep. I think these were about 6 feet tall by 5 feet wide. And what they were doing was they were actually just, you can see they're putting them in like building blocks and tying them in place, and then from the back, shooting them together with tech screws, and then they would cover all the butt joints on the outside with that joiner flashing. Now, we talked about a lot of acoustic louvers, varying percent open areas, varying pressure drop, and that's the neat thing, which I didn't mention earlier, was because there's so many varying percent open areas models at Kinetics and so many different depths, there's a louver here that will work for your application. There's so much opportunity to be able to pick the right louver, to tune it to the back pressure allowed and also the noise reduction you need. So that's the nice thing, is it's better than just having one or two louvers. You really need to have a good gamut of louvers like we do, because every application is different. Now, Kinetics can design and manufacture not just rectangular louvers, but we're running into more and more where we can custom cut louver shapes. We have the capabilities with SolidWorks and all of our analysis internally and our automated DXF and laser and cut items that we can make triangles if you need to. And in this case, a lot of them, like in the lower right, you can see it's actually a triangle that's fitting in the part of a building. The architect wants that look. You know, we have one here that's an outside air intake bunker, we call it, because it's under basically afterwards they put grass in here and everything looked beautiful, but to service that building back there. The point is there's a certain look that somebody wants, the architect wants, and what they want is they want that look, but they also need the noise reduction and the back pressure to be correct. Well, Kinetics has those capabilities. So louvers do not need to be rectangular with sharp edge cuts. And I must say, it sounds silly, but no application's too small. You hear that, no job's too big, no job's too small. So whether it is retrofit acoustic louvers on a pump building where they've taken the weather louvers out, these were all weather louvers on the right here, but due to the noise standard they need on-site, 85 dBA, that they were looking for, the weather louvers weren't giving them to them at this pump house. So they popped out the weather louvers. And remember how I said you can tune our louvers, noise reduction and back pressure. So we had to make sure the back pressure was not too much. These are VPLs. See how there's thinner and more blades, so it looks more architecturally pleasing. And we were able to pick a model with percent open area and depth, both to control the, stay within the back pressure available and control the noise reduction. On the left, we have actually a piece of equipment where we had to fit acoustic louvers to the equipment. All those acoustic louvers on this side are actually hinged on one side and are able to be open for access to the equipment. So that's a smaller job, but also we can do very large jobs. Acoustic louvers can be applied to big jobs. For instance, this building here on this wall, it was for a big compressors, jet engine generating. And what happens here is that this side, we only had acoustic louvers up about 30 feet. But on the other side of the buildings, which were 100 feet, 140 feet long, they were louvers from floor to eave there. And so that really worked out good. And then over here on the left, that's a very large chiller yard. And it's a chiller yard at a university. They had weather louvers in there. This university is really big into tennis. And if you go from our point of view, there's a bunch of tennis courts. And what happened was the university was so happy. They got brand new cooling towers and they had weather louvers here. The problem is they couldn't hear the announcements across where we are looking at this picture. They couldn't hear the announcements during the tennis matches. So lo and behold, Kinetics came by and with our acoustic louvers, and these are just the angled ones. Remember I said at a certain angle, you can see through them, and that was fine in this case. But with the V-shaped louvers, you wouldn't have seen that. Now, our acoustic louvers are very important to us because they're important to you, and they're all painted. So with our acoustic louvers, all our acoustic louver jobs are palletized, banded, foam wrapped, because they're almost always powder coated, probably 99.9% of the time. There's a skeleton frame built here with plywood sides. And this is the way we can ship it all over the country and all over the world because we do supply acoustic louvers worldwide. And so we take a lot of pride in getting you the product you need when you need it in one piece to hold up to all the freight and the rough handling. So with that, I wanted to say, Kinetics, we create quiet that improves the quality of life. That's what we do. We're a company that just deals in noise control products and systems and solutions and your knowledge base. That's what we do. We make no other products, but if it deals with vibration isolation, airborne noise control, seismic or wind restraint, that's what we're about. So if you have any questions in the future, one of the best emails to get you hooked up either with one of our reps to help you out locally, or you can contact us directly at the factory is environmental sales, which means outdoor noise control, environmental sales at kineticsnoise.com. I'm John Sofra, Director of Sales for the environmental, industrial, and commercial airside markets. My email there, jsofra at kineticsnoise.com. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. And with that, that is concludes our presentation for today, and I appreciate you giving me a little bit of time.
We do not have any questions at this point in time, but we'll go ahead and hang out for a couple more minutes. If anyone has any questions, feel free to use the question bar in your GoToWebinar window, or yeah, definitely you can email John at that email that's on the screen. So like I said, we'll hang out for a couple more minutes. And yeah. Do you have before and after data of what?
Yes, actually, that is a great, Craig, that is a great question. So Kinetics noise control data is backed three ways. It's backed by finite elements. We have a one-of-a-kind finite element acoustics program that will be able to take all this into account and come up with transmission loss data. We also have all of our louvers independently tested per ASTM E90 for transmission loss in independent laboratories. And then we also have before and after data where we can then compare and see how well it models to real life applications. And when we use our acoustic louvers, transmission loss converted to noise reduction, we also take into account the reflectivity of the surrounding areas and work with the acoustical consultant or engineer. So great question, yes.
Will you conduct future presentations including sound attenuators like this?
Actually, we will, and we already have one in our Kinetics data bank. Becca can get you hooked up with that, where we give a, I think Kristen, Becca, it's about a 50-minute or 40-minute presentation, and all on silencers, how they perform, types, uses, all that. Yes.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to marketing@kineticsnoise.com, and I can send you some of the other presentations that we've done in the past.
So once again, contact us, folks. Be on the lookout. Kinetics is having a lot of presentations over the last year. I hope everybody's staying safe and that we're all coming out of this situation we've been in for a year and start living again a little bit. So really appreciate everybody joining us. Thank you.